Good evening and welcome to the regular City Council meeting of Monday, June 25th, 2018. At this time, can we have the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember DeRosa.
Here.
Councilmember Lane.
Here.
Vice Mayor Klein.
Here.
Councilmember Rhino.
Here.
And Mayor Vieira.
Here. Next, we will have the invocation by Lauren Gregory of the Victory Assembly of God, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight, Lord. We pray for wisdom and grace as we make decisions, Father. I pray, Father, that you just help us to be of one heart and one mind, Lord, in the things that are important to this city, and bless and just guide us. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have no presentations this evening, so we'll move to citizens' communication to council on matters not included on the agenda. While the City Council welcomes and encourages participation in City Council meetings, adopted rules allow no more than 5 minutes for expression of non-agenda items. Matters under the jurisdiction of the City Council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public. However, California law prohibits the City Council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the City Council. Citizens are entitled to address the City Council on any agenda item subject to the 5-minute provision. Before I get to the speaker cards, there's a couple things I wanted to go over. First, I'm going to go through each one of the names here of the people that filled out a speaker card. As I was kind of glancing through a few, I want to make sure they're not related to something that we have on the on the agenda here, like the budget, because that's when you would speak. The public comment period is on items that are not on the agenda, just for that clarification. And then the other thing is, when you come to the podium, please state your name for the record, and then you'll see there's a trio of lights on there. There's a green light, which will light up, and it'll give you up to 5 minutes to speak. Before, I think it's maybe 30 seconds before the yellow light will come on. When the red light comes on, then your talking period, you need to finish up your final comments, and because we want to make sure that we hear from everyone that will be speaking. So the first one I have here is, it looks like James, is it Walter or Wallen? Walton? Walter, okay. You want to talk about something, is it related to the budget? Because you have on here police department. Raises and stuff like that. Okay, then come on up. That we'll go ahead and start with that. You said raises, I said. Does that fall under the budget, or is that a...
Sorry. I think you can go either place if you want to put it in the budget.
So would you like to address it when we talk about the budget, or do you want to address it before? When do you talk about the budget? That's item number 12. Okay. Yeah, we'll have it when the budget item comes up, because I'm assuming that's what you would like to talk about. Okay. There's another one here, Avery Jackson, with same type of thing? Okay. Renee Gaskell? You would like to, again, this says fire budget, staffing increases, sanctuary status. We can talk about some of those, but I think if it comes to the staffing, that probably would be better when we get to the budget, if that's okay. I'll definitely give you time to speak then. And I apologize if I get this wrong, because I can't. It's May Rico? Okay, and I don't think we have this on the agenda. Is it California Values Act? Okay. So I'll have you go ahead and come up at this time if you'd like.
My name is May Rico. I am the Executive Director of Haven Women's Center of Stanislaus. And I'm here today because I've heard the Council is considering putting forth the resolution opposing the California Values Act. Whether or not such a resolution is worded to impact local law or policy, it would still send a strong message to the people of Ceres and the rest of Stanislaus County. I felt it was important to share some things for you to think about should that conversation arise. Haven Women's Center serves over 2,000 survivors of domestic and sexual abuse each year, and we've been doing that work since 1977. 65% of our clients report ethnicities belonging to communities of color. 46% of our clients identify as Latino, and 17% of our clients report a language other than English as their primary language. You'll note I don't break out how many of our clients are immigrants. It's not a question that we ask or track, because from our client's perspective, it's not a safe question to ask. It's a question that can make people afraid you'll say you won't help them, or make them feel like they're taking something they don't have a right to, as if only citizens deserve to feel safe. And lately, it can make people fear we'll report them, or have them arrested, or take their children. It doesn't matter that we wouldn't do any of those things, or couldn't do many of those things. What matters is the fear itself. That's real, and that keeps them away. That keeps them hiding in situations where they are being hurt, or exploited, or terrorized. Because the demon they know is better than the demon they don't. And the fear doesn't care what your intent is behind policies and laws. The fear only cares about what feeds it. That's videos of children screaming for their parents as they're put into an ICE van. That's videos of whites telling someone with brown skin in a Starbucks or a Walmart to go back where they came from, without knowing or caring whether that person is an immigrant. And that's proclamations from local governments saying they don't care about their immigrant communities. Because no matter what words you use or what your best intentions are, if you put forth that type of proclamation, you'll feed that fear. Thank you.
The last card I have here is Darren, is it Vienne?
Darren Venn. I'm a sergeant with the Ceres Police Department here. I'm also the president of the Police Officer Association here in Ceres. Bear with me, I had some dental work, so half my face is still numb. On behalf of the Ceres Police Department Association, I'd like to make a few comments regarding the status of the police department. We as an association know tough decisions have to be made in order to keep the citizens of Ceres safe and the city running at optimal efficiency. In the past several years, we have stood by with the loss of 7 positions. Over the last several years, the men and women of the Ceres Police Officer Association have been working at minimum staffing levels and using a mandated overtime list to cover the vacant shifts, which in turn has caused a strain on the officer's family. I'm not going to stand up here and give you inflated statistics or call volumes to bolster our position. We as an association do not think it's wise to use fear as a tactic to garner public support. Excuse me. The rising crime rate due to the release of violent and nonviolent offenders speaks for itself. As an association, we believe in working together with the council and the community to solve the current issues we are facing. Despite our best efforts, the recruitment pool has become smaller and smaller, and frankly, the Ceres Police Department is the last place anyone wants to work. That's partly due to lack of opportunity, lack of economic growth, and insecurity in the city. The men and women who have weathered the storm are now questioning the reasons why they continue to stay. Over the past 3 to 4 years, the police department has lost 10 officers due to two competing agencies. When these officers were polled to find out the reasons they left, the common theme was lack of personal economic growth, better opportunity, no future plan for the city, and uncertainty. Most of these officers wanted to stay because they liked the culture of the department and the men and women that they worked with, but they were given no choice due to the financial insecurity of the city. We believe we're at a crossroads and want to minimize any future loss of officers. You, as a council, have an opportunity to ensure we keep the great officers we currently have and play a vital role in helping with our current recruitment and retention issues. There are currently issues that have been presented to you that will have a great impact to you for the future of this police department. The men and women of the Ceres Police Officers Association, we want to work hand in hand with you and the citizens of Ceres so that we can give the best possible policing services the city can provide. Thank you.
Excuse me. This is a public meeting. I would please ask you to refrain from the clapping. It's not normally the way things are handled. Thank you. At this time, I don't have any more speaker cards for public comment. If anyone would like to speak on a non-agenda item, please come forth and state your name for the record.
Excuse me, Leonard Shepard. I'm not going to talk about budget or anything. I'm going to talk about the insane, stupid drivers in Ceres. Modesto, Turlock, Sonora, wherever you go. 3 times today I've had people cut me off, not even look to see, one came out from on Mitchell at the turn lane, came out of that shopping center, right across in front of me. I was going down the road. They didn't even look, almost hit me. And I thought, what the heck? What's the matter with people anymore? They don't care. Look around you at all the stuff you see in Ceres, Modesto, Turlock, wherever, Patterson. It's all the same. People are slobs and they don't care. Their houses are ratty looking. They don't keep their yards up. To me, I don't know what's happened. I know you guys all can see the same thing. I keep harping on the fact that Ken Lane's got one of the nicest places in town because he takes care of it and he cares about it. And he won't let his kids mow his lawn because he knows how he wants it done. And I can appreciate that and I applaud that, and I'm not going to clap, but I can say I applaud people who take care of themselves and are responsible for themselves. I don't understand. I was brought up to be responsible for yourself. When I was a kid, the people that were looked down on were the people who didn't take care of themselves, weren't responsible for themselves. Now it seems to be a plague. They all wanted something for nothing. I don't understand it, but I've become a lot more aware of the idiots around me. I realize I've been out of the fire service for 22 years, excuse me. And in the fire service, you had to watch out for everybody because everybody wasn't watch out for that big red engine. To the people, it didn't exist. They just drove in front of you and things like that. They're still doing it. I don't know what's happened. But I sure don't feel good about asking our officers to go out there and try to stop them because they'll get run over. Police officers now are a target. And unfortunately, so are firefighters now. They've become targets to the public. You wear a blue uniform of any kind, and somebody's going to take a shot at you. I don't know what's happening, but all I know is that I try to be responsible for myself and my wife, and that's it. I'm not going to care about anybody else. And I know you guys all think that way, but let's try to come up to some common ground where stupidity isn't the norm. But I don't know how. I just had to get that off my chest after the guy almost ran over me. You know, it's just, so you guys have got a tough road ahead of you. And everybody's going to be on your case. But whatever decision you have to make it. I'm not going to say there's an endless supply of money or anything else. You are the guys that have the final decision. And I wouldn't sit up there for anything in the world. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the council on a non-agenda item?
Hello. The park over by Sam Bond, please tell me, or I'd like to know, my kids would like to know, why it's taking so long to get it open, why we didn't use artificial grass so that the grass looks better when the dog park opens, some way of rinsing off the pee so that it looks better, and why on God's earth it costs $1.2 million, and how long are we going to have summer without that park? We've been waiting for it for years. They love it. I love all of the innovation items on there, the fountains and everything, but our kids are dying to use that park. So if you guys could, speed it up or something, it would be much appreciated. Lots of kids in the neighborhood are just looking forward to it.
Okay. Anyone else?
Gene Yakeley series. I just gave the mayor 14 photographs of a business that's in series or doing business right now, and they violated the signage code several weekends now. They seem to be putting them on the weekends along the city signs, speed limit signs, just wherever they feel like putting them. And evidently, from what James told me in the planning department, when they signed an agreement to do business with the city of Ceres, that part of that doing business here, they have to sign up and abide by our city ordinances. And that has to do with signage, and they're not doing that. So here we go. Some individual business in Ceres just do not abide by the city Ceres code ordinances. If the businesses that violate our ordinances for our cities, why are they not cited with fines when they are violated? Many businesses and individuals who violate our ordinances know after 5 p.m. weekdays and on Saturdays and Sundays, code enforcement does not happen. So if some businesses bring large revenue to Ceres, does that mandate no code violations or just a slap on the hand? How much more of these violations will continue? Posting of signage all over Ceres, in my own opinion, making Ceres look like a circus is coming to town. Trash thrown in our gutters, household items in many places in Ceres, water abuse during the day and night, and evidently in the water department, we're supposed to take care of these violations at night, but that's not happening from what I understand. They don't have the money or the manpower to do that. Piles of grass and oversized tree trimmings in the street gutters, that's been happening for years. And Bonzi or whoever is contracted, they pick it up anyway because they say they don't want the city to look bad. But that's not giving the homeowners any room to make improvement. They just continue to throw it because they know Bonzi's going to pick it up. Parking on lawns, parking in street courts with autos and trucks front end first to the curb. I believe that's supposed to be a state law that you have to park parallel to the curb in any city. Unless the city can change that, I don't know. And the list goes on. There's trash along roadsides in different areas of Ceres that never gets addressed. That's not every street in Ceres, but there's many of them. And some on the north side and some on the south side going out of town. Without more code enforcement, the city of Ceres gains very little ground in the journey to improve our individual neighborhoods and give the homeowners quality of life, comfort, and peace.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council on a non-agenda item? Okay. Can we solicit, I mean, I can talk to that business owner about removal of those signs.
Yeah, we'll take care of that.
Okay. Okay. All right, if there's no more public comment, we will move on to appointments to boards and commissions. We have none. Conflict of interest declaration. Is there anyone on the council that would like to declare a conflict of interest on any of the consent calendar, new business, or public hearing items? I would like to declare conflict of interest on item number 8. My firm did the lot line adjustment for the Series Vet project, so I'll take that one separately. So at this time, is there anyone on the council that has a conflict other than myself? Okay, with that, we'll move to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by a single motion unless otherwise requested by an individual council member or the public for special consideration. Otherwise, recommendation of staff will be accepted and acted upon by roll call vote. At this time, is there anyone on the council that would like an item pulled for further discussion?
Item 6.
All right, is there anyone in the audience that would like a consent calendar item pulled other than items 6 or 8? Okay, with that, I'll bring it back for direction on the other items.
Move to approve 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Drossett, a second by Councilmember Rhino. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember DeRossa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lane?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Rhino?
Yes.
And Mayor Vieira.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, item number 6, resolution number 2018-066, authorizing the city manager to execute the consultant agreement amendment number 2 with CSG Inc. for fire plan check and inspection services. Vice Mayor Klein.
Well, I have one question pertaining to this, but then I'd like to add a little bit to it. But according to this is for fire plan check inspection. So when the fire chief gets hired, would that consulting services go away?
Not likely. It would only be if the fire chief had those particular skill sets of plan check and inspection. With the current pool of fire chief, that's a pretty unique skill set to have those. So this would likely continue even with the fire chief position hired.
And even though it has nothing to do with this, my question is, currently, who is doing the inspections of all the fireworks booths?
Battalion Chief Serpa is handling that currently.
Okay,
He's scheduled to do those inspections this week.
all right. No other further.
Any other questions? Anyone in the audience have any question on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for direction on that item.
Move to adopt resolution 2018-066.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Klein, a second by Councilmember Lane. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember DeRossa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lane?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Rhino?
Yes.
And Mayor Vieira.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, the next item, I have a conflict. I need to go out of the room? Okay.
With that, item number 8, resolution 2018-068, approving a lot line adjustment. Does the city council have any questions?
No.
Anybody in the public? Come on up to the podium, please.
Yeah, Gene Yeagley. I'm just kind of curious. That's pretty much why I got up. These two particular properties, I'm not too familiar where 1318 East Whitmore is. And what are these properties going to be used for? Is it residential or business? What's the purpose of doing this?
Well, and I'll let Tom answer it, but it is on the east side of Mitchell Road, and it's the veterinary clinic and the
Correct.
lot next door. So, Mr. Westbrook, go ahead.
So the vet clinic got approval through the Planning Commission to expand their clinic. With those improvements, they're going to expand their parking lot. They had 2 lots. They're just combining them into one so that all those improvements will be on the same lot.
But it's a business currently on Whitmore, where the old, right next door, what is it, the old Perco's or the Waffle Shop?
House.
Yep.
Then there's the veterinary clinic, and then there's, so,
Yeah, so it's strictly, well, I know that area, so strictly business.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
correct.
Now everybody else knows.
Anybody else in the public? I'll bring this back for council.
Move to adopt resolution number 2018-068.
Second.
Can I have the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember DeRosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lane?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Rhino?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0 with Mayor Vieira absent due to a conflict.
Okay, and we'll wait for the mayor to get back before we continue with the new business, item number 10.
Okay, we will move on. We have no unfinished business this evening. New business, we have one item, item number 10, Bertolotti Disposal Solid Waste Contract. Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This evening, we're reviewing the Bertolotti Disposal Solid Waste Contract. As you recall, we had the same conversation a year ago. Bertolotti, formerly known as Bonzi, has been providing solid waste services to the City of Sirius since 1971. We've enjoyed a long, very successful contract and relationship with Bertolotti. The last contract was entered into Bertolotti on March 15th, 2010. The way that contract is structured, it is a rolling 8-year contract, such that if the council were to provide notice or the Bertolottis were to provide notice, it would start the clock, so to speak, of starting the end of that contract. Last year, we asked the council the question if you'd like to start that contract. We were 7 years in. We are now 8 years in. So the question again this evening is to whether to put an end date onto that contract, which would necessitate one of 2 actions happening in the future, either renegotiating the terms of the agreement or proceeding with another option that the council may direct. In essence, if you were to give us that direction this evening, as the staff's recommended, the end date for the contract would be in 2026. So we look for your direction. Steve from Bertolotti is here this evening, would speak on this item as well. We're open for any questions you may have.
Vice Mayor Klein?
I have a couple of questions. Let's say we don't put an end date on this thing. Can we go back and negotiate or tweak the contract? Because, you know, the city now has their own street sweeping, and they're on a schedule. And sometimes, you know, they don't coincide with the leaf and limb pickup. They don't coincide with the trash day. I know in my neighborhood, the trash cans are picked up on Monday and every other week, and then all of a sudden I get the street sweeper and half the people don't have their trash cans in and things like that because of when it's picked up. And what can we do to curb the essence of individuals that cut their grass and dump it in the gutter? Because we put, you know, the city of Ceres wants it put in the waste wheeler. We don't have a recyclable or a green trash can like Turlock does. And yet, especially in my neighborhood, I still have probably a dozen citizens that put it in the gutter. So can we negotiate something without having to put an end date, or do we have to put an end date to negotiate it?
Well, there's no incentive for them to negotiate. I mean, but obviously we have a relationship. We work with them on a regular basis, but you know, the contract is what the contract is. So by putting an end date, it forces that negotiation and making sure that we address those issues. But that doesn't mean that we can't try to solve those issues without an end date. That's we would look for council direction. The leaf and limb and the grass clippings, that's a challenge that we've been wrestling with and having difficulty. We write letters and cite people, and you know, it's definitely a challenge. But that is, as mentioned in the staff report, different can system, and those conversations are something we've been looking at for a number of years. By setting an end date to the contract, it forces those conversations and ensure that those contract items get addressed.
I'm good.
Councilmember Lane?
Yeah, I think, I remember we talked about this last year, I think it was. We were going to come back and talk, it seemed like 2 or 4 years. I don't remember now what it was. But anyway, I don't want to see an end date on this. I think this here certainly could be worked out with staff and Berlotti theirself and work through the issues and come back and just give us a report on kind of what was discussed and that sort of thing. Toby, would that be feasible to do that? I know the leaf and limb thing was something that, we talked about, but.
What kind of time frame are you looking for?
Well, I mean, I think you need to have some time to resolve this. I wouldn't care if it was next year you came back, because obviously we're going to have to go through another leaf and limb type of area to make sure we resolve those things. So, until that happens again, we're not going to know whether it's resolved or not, right? You can give a direction, you guys can discuss something, but.
Yeah, leaf and limb is an ongoing, obviously.
Yeah, it is.
The leaf season, when we hit the wintertime, obviously is a much
Right.
larger volume, but,
Right.
The ongoing pickup of leaf and limb and, scheduling the street sweeping around those activities, that's an ongoing, daily activity. But
Sure it
of course,
is.
so that's why this item's on the agenda, is looking for council direction on how you'd like us to address it.
So just so that I'm clear on this, the provision that's currently in the contract says that we would have to give notice to them, and then we would not entertain, or they wouldn't have to entertain a discussion with us for 7 years from now.
Well, that just sets the end of the contract.
That would be
But
the end of the contract.
Correct. That just sets that clock in motion, right?
Okay.
It eliminates the rolling year. But
But that
that
wouldn't-
doesn't preclude us from having conversations at any point in time between now and the end of that 7-year process.
Okay, so if let's just say hypothetically, we did it as part of a, I don't want to say technicality, but a requirement as part of the terms of the contract that said, 7 years. Could we negotiate with them before that period of time, or could we, I mean, that wouldn't preclude them from being hired again at the end of the
course not.
7?
Yeah, no, this is
It's just, it just,
Turns off that provision is all
Okay.
what it's doing.
okay. I just wanted clarification.
That's right. Part of the
Councilmember
reason why,
Crossen?
and I know that Bert's here, and so is Steve, and I'd like to hear from them, because I know what they're going to tell you is the same thing that they told us last time that we had this meeting last year, is the reason why that rolls, if they have the contract for more than 5 years. In fact, can we have them come up right now and share?
Yeah, why don't you-
Just because.
I know, but let me let
Okay.
let
Oh, I didn't know.
Councilmember Rhino
Sorry,
speak,
Councilmember.
and then
Absolutely.
I'll have him.
Well, then let me just go ahead. It's their buying power. So they get things at a lesser rate for the loans.
Sure.
If we put an end date to it, in 4 years, say they need more equipment, right? They don't have the buying power to be able to purchase that. And if you go back, and I watched the video that we said that we'd bring this back if there was issues. We actually said we'd bring it back in some sort of a study session, which we never did, because there was really no issues there in regards to the contract itself.
I think the only discussion I remember over the last 15 years is what do we want to do with the leaf and limb, and what it all boils down to is people don't want to change what we currently have. So that's what I was going to say. Is,
Well, no, and see, and I do agree with Councilmember Drossett. That's why I asked Mr. Wells if we didn't put an end date to this, if there's a way we can talk and negotiate a couple aspects, because the city undertook the street sweeping, maybe the city, and I'm just saying hypothetically, can readjust their street sweeping where, my neighborhood's a Monday trash day, so street sweeping comes on Tuesday instead of a Monday, or if it comes in on Wednesday, because I know that Bonza Burlati does it, or it's Burlati, years ago it was the other way, But Burlati does a good job picking up the leaf and limb on recyclable weeks. So it's a matter of what the city does now that they have the contract internally on street sweeping and making those adjustments. And then how do we turn around and take care of the people that cut their grass, put it in the street, and do that where it's not, a burden where we're calling it in, Burlati's going out and picking it up, which they shouldn't be doing because it should be in the trash bin. Is there a way that we can talk about that aspects without having to set an end date? That was my question to
Right,
Mr.
and
Wells.
it's just a matter of them getting together.
I think there is. That's
Absolutely.
What Councilmember Rhino?
But have we even attempted to have a discussion with them? Because,
Yes, we have.
and have they met with you over
Yes.
those issues?
Yes, we've met with them.
So they're willing to meet and discuss, but we can't resolve the problem with the street sweeper coming before the leaf and limb gets picked up?
It's a scheduling issue. So in the years past, when we had contract street sweeping, the street sweeper was late and Bertolotti was late. If they're both late, then there's no issue. Now that we have city crews doing the street sweeping, they are on a pretty set schedule, and so we have some flexibility in there, but obviously we will likely need to put more in there. But when the leaf and limb program gets behind for any number of reasons, it could be mechanical failure, it could be an accident, it could be any number of things, but when leaf and limb gets behind, the street sweeper is coming along, that's where it creates a problem. So obviously there's several solutions there that are potential. We have had conversations with them. Again, we have a good relationship with them, we continue to meet with them, but we've gotten several complaints in the past month, which brought this back to the attention of why this question's being asked.
Well, I would think if we can resolve the issues, then we should keep an end date on it, just like we have now. But
there isn't an end date.
There is no end date. Okay. But I thought from our conversations, Mr. Wells, that we couldn't resolve those issues because, as you know,
We haven't had success to date, but that doesn't mean they're here in the audience. If the council would like to ask them their approach, then we're happy from a staff
because
perspective. we're happy
I
to.
know it's a problem in my neighborhood.
Okay, at this time, I wanted to open up to the public, and I know I see representatives from Bertolotti here. If you'd like to come forth and speak.
Good evening. Mayor, council members, Steve Holloway from Bertolotti Disposal. I was here last year, here again tonight to request that no notice be given, no formal notice. We're 47 years into this contract since we started, not this exact contract, but this is a very important contract to us. It's our only contract. So as far as negotiating power, you have it all. I mean, it's up to you guys pretty much, the fate of our company. It's all we can do is try to provide the best possible service. These issues have been around and we've discussed them. Probably communication would be the biggest thing. I mean, as far as real time when our crews get slammed in the wintertime, cold snaps come or everyone's trimming. We don't drive at a 20-mile-an-hour sweeping pace. Sometimes we get on a street and we'll fill the truck twice on it. Some of our areas are bigger, and originally they didn't have as big trees. Now they're all growing up, and like last year we picked up an extra 500 tons of green waste out there. The illegal and the bulkies have also increased quite a bit, as you know. So yeah, it's a very important contract to us, and we're here. That's our only job, is to service you. I mean, all the requirements coming up from the state, new laws that are going to hit home, and they're really putting some teeth into them. And we're here to work with you to provide those, to meet those mandates and goals. So we're all ears. I mean, I'm here to work with you guys.
So, would you be amenable, and this is just me throwing this out there, I haven't talked to any of my colleagues, would you be amenable if we had maybe the staff and one or two of the sub-council members meet with you to say, hey, these are some of the things that we'd like to kind of coordinate with on? Would that be something you guys would be okay?
Most definitely.
Okay.
And I believe that, the whole purpose of this giving formal notice, I think, was in the contract because if either party's unhappy with what's going on, I don't, for us to get a new contract, I mean, if the contract is old, either language-wise or it's not up to date, let's work on another one to replace this one, but let's keep this one in place so that we have the continuity to do our planning. This last year, we put in $1.2 million in trucks and equipment, and the only way we're able to do that is through loans. And if we only have 3 to 4 years left on it, we can't get our financing. And you start letting a contract drop down to just a few years left on it. A lot of these projects and things we're working on, it's harder to deal with. I mean, we're looking at our company ending in a year or two. I mean, if it gets down that far. So I really request that no notice be given tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Please come forward and state your name for the record.
Dan Thatcher, 3800 Don Pedro Court in Ceres. Going back to the trash pickup day and the leaves and the things like that, if they got down to understand it, the leaves get more and more and the trash, the leaf pickup, they get behind and whatnot. But if they were set more on a scheduled day, and the schedule that I was originally told was the day after the blue barrels go out is the day they pick the leaves up. My wife and I, we try to wait till around then to take all of our stuff out. Unfortunately, sometimes they come on Tuesday when they're supposed to come on Thursday, so we miss them, so we have to wait 2 weeks. Sometimes I've had to take my stuff to their transfer station, and it's cost me over $100. That's one. Get more on a schedule, and more on a schedule with the street sweepers. They come by every Monday, but I wish they would use a little bit more water when they do come by. I know we're in a drought and all that, but all they do is kick the dust up, for one. And another issue I have is as you drive around town and you see people throwing mattresses, couches, junk out in the front, Berlardi's will pick up twice a year, I think. And if you have more than 2 times a year, then you just keep it in your backyard till your time's up. Some people just take it out and throw it out in the street and just leave it. I think if they put maybe something like a bounty on a couch, a bounty on a dishwasher, barbecue, whatever it might be, to where if I went around in my trailer and I picked it up and I took it over to Barolati's, they would pay me $10 instead of me having to pay $25 to dump it. Something along those measures, kind of like they did on the soda cans and the plastic bottles. They put a bounty, so to speak, on those, recycling deposit on that. And that would help keep our city clean. And the other thing is the trash receptacles. We've had the same one for close to 30 years, and they're all beat up. The addresses are written like a kindergartner wrote them. And when I go to see my daughter in Colorado, they have beautiful receptacles. I mean, they're printed nice with their addresses, nice colors, and they look brand new. I know they're not brand new. I know it costs a lot to put them in there, but I mean, after 30 years of having the same trash receptacle, they could maybe upgrade them a little bit. So that's about all I had to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Gene Yakeley. In regards to the gentleman from Bertolotti, in my neighborhood, as well as some of your other neighborhoods that you guys live in, the bit with the grass and all that stuff, my question still hasn't been answered. And a lady, I can't recall her name, she retired about 2 years ago, that took care of all this for the city. Why is it continues that they keep picking up this stuff? You know, there's no deterrent at all. And one of the other things that I mentioned to the city council before, and it was more broad than just this subject of the grass and stuff, you need to print stuff out in Spanish. We have a large Spanish-speaking community, and evidently we're not reaching them. And that's, I believe, the city's fault. When you reach a certain percentage of people from another nationality that speak a different language, we have to talk to them. And in the utility bill, we could put something to address this on one piece of paper, one side in big print about garbage pickup and stuff, and the other side in Spanish. There's other things that have been enclosed in utility bills. We could do this, and I don't know the cost, but it's got to be worth something to get across to the rest of the community. That's about it. I'd just like an answer why it continues. It's been going on for years, and like this gentleman was just talking, he's been here 30 years. I'm right behind him.
Anyone else that would like to address this item? Okay. All right, I'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the council for direction or discussion.
Well, you know, if Burlati is willing to sit down at the table, I don't see a need to put an end date on it. I mean, they've you know, Bonzer Burlati is what I'm used when I was, you know, growing up. Now it's just Burlati. I think for the most part, they've done a pretty good job. And before I got on the council, even times that I've contacted them to have them come do certain things, you know, replace my trash can because it was beat up, things like that. I think they've done the city a service, but I'd also like to see them come sit at the table that we can work something out with, you know, Public Works and whatnot, and how we can work together collectively to, lack of better words, cite the individuals that dump their grass in front of their house. You know, because, you know, Modesto City, the last I knew, they dump it out in their curb and somebody comes through and picks it up. So, you know, I see no use to putting an end date as long as we can sit down with Burlati and work out some of these aspects and work with the city.
Okay. Councilmember Rhino?
I would agree with Vice Mayor Klein as long as Mr. Holloway, representing Bertolotti, is willing to meet with us to discuss some issues that apparently quite a few of us are having, that we should not have the end date as well.
Okay. I would agree. My neighborhood seems to be handled pretty nicely. They do a great job and don't have these issues, so I can't speak to that. But I agree. You know, they've been a long fixture here. I just try to think about, you know, starting from scratch and somebody else. I mean, they know the community. They understand it. They're willing to come to the table and kind of work through and work on the relationship and the partnership we have and that we've built over, you know, almost 5 decades. I can support keeping it as is. So,
one question, you know, we're talking about these cans that I think the state is pushing us toward. Is that right, Steve? The new cans possibly that we're going to have, the state's push us to another bin. That's something that I'd like to see us work on and coincide. I don't want no end date, but start working on that so we can, you know, just kind of just roll over into it, if you will.
The state's telling us what type of trash cans.
Oh yeah,
it's
horrible.
What they're driving towards is a change in the overall waste stream and how it's being collected. One of the driving changes coming at us will be organics and how the organics are collected, which may change how our can system is set up. Similar on the goals for you know, the recycling increases and the amount of garbage that is going to the landfills. Those are all competing interests that obviously our contract, when it was written in 2010, didn't anticipate, you know, contemplate what state is going to come up with, and they continue to make it more and more difficult for us as cities as well as, you know, our contract haulers to deal with. So this is, you know, nothing new. The state continuing to tell us how to do things from pick up the garbage. This is a challenge that we will face, and they're writing the regulations now that are honestly completely ridiculous, but we'll continue to deal with it.
Well, if the state suggests it's the best, it's got to be good, right?
It's gotta be right. I would agree. I just, you know, I see Bert's in the audience today. Thank you, Bert, for all you've done for this community. And can you picture having 3 garbage cans out in front of your house and getting cited for it because it's against city ordinance, right, Toby?
Currently.
Currently.
The municipal code is going to be reviewed, so that's something we can revisit if you'd like.
Right.
Maybe we get to that this summer.
And I did learn 20,000 cans are out, you know, throughout the course of time. That's, I think, 20,000 cans. Is that correct? And that's a lot of work. So, and again, I just appreciate you guys, and there's no end date for me.
All right, well, I'll look for direction.
No end date.
No end date.
I think I heard from everyone.
Somebody going to make a...
No end
You don't
date.
need a
When
motion?
Nate,
We don't
no
need
end
it.
date.
We don't need action. It's just direction. I mean, it was set up for, if you wanted to set an end date, then that's, so in essence, you've said no end date, and you've given us direction
Yeah,
to work with them
I
to.
think you've heard unanimously.
Yep,
We're
we're
good.
clear.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll move to public hearing. Item number 11, public hearing to consider resolution number 2018-070, establishing the annual assessment levy for the 2018-2019 fiscal year on the businesses in the downtown area defined in the Ceres Downtown Revitalization Area Board, CDRAB, annual report for the activities and programs of the Ceres Downtown Revitalization Area Board for fiscal year 2018-2019. Mr. Hallam.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. I'm Steve Hallam. I serve as the Redevelopment and Economic Development Manager for the City of Ceres. The item before you this evening is a request to consider assessing a levy on all businesses located in the Ceres Downtown Revitalization Area for this next fiscal year 2018-19. The Revitalization District was formed in 1989 for the purpose of generating revenue to assist in the maintenance, upkeep, and revitalization of downtown Ceres. Since it was originated, an annual assessment has been levied on all businesses within the area boundaries, and the funds that are raised from these businesses are restricted in their purpose, may only be used to pay for projects and activities that promote and positively contribute to the enhancement of the downtown district. This is approved by your council annually. In fact, 2 weeks ago on June 11th, the council approved the annual budget and report for the 18-19 fiscal year. The proposed levy has not changed since 1989 and generally assesses $10 to $25 per month on all businesses in the area based on their gross receipts. And for this next fiscal year, the assessment is expected to raise approximately $13,650 that again are restricted for district activities. City Council is asked to take the following two actions this evening. First, open the public hearing for the purpose of taking any relevant testimony by anyone who wishes to speak on the matter. And then two, we recommend adoption of the proposed resolution that will establish and assess a levy on all businesses located within the Ceres Downtown Revitalization Area for fiscal year 2018-19. Are there any questions I could answer this evening?
I do have a question. Since the revitalization in downtown, as the businesses down there participated a little more, have they had any input? Have they talked to you?
We have had increased input at the board meetings when we do meet. In fact, the item in the report about enhanced security came about to be put in the budget from some merchants and property owners coming to the commission or the board in April, and then we had another meeting in May where they expressed some concern, and we added that as a relevant project in this next year's budget. I would say generally yes. There's an uptick in activity and interest from the merchants.
And you know, I know there's been a couple of increases in businesses down there. With that being said, you know, are they participating in the board? Are they coming and speaking and? You know, they're aware of this, right?
It's the newer businesses that are taking advantage of opportunities to let their views be known. The other thing that has happened, a year and a half ago, we were looking at a declining revenue stream on the assessments and did some research, and there were a handful of businesses that were up to 4 years delinquent in their payments. And so we made an effort to go and talk with them, send them information, bring them all current, and that increased assessment revenue by almost $2,000 per year for last year and then again this year, and that's been maintained. So again, part of it is just attention and the newer merchants and the interest that's increasing coming in, the investment that the city put in, and now it's resulting in private investment to some of these storefronts and buildings, businesses.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, at this time, I'll open up the public hearing on this item. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this item? Please come forth and state your name. Okay. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for further discussion and/or direction.
Move for approval of resolution number 2018-070.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember DeRossett?
Yes.
Councilmember Lane?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Rhino?
Yes.
And Mayor Vieira.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, moving on to item number 12, public hearing to consider resolution number 2018-071, adopting the annual budget for the City of Ceres for the 2018-2019 fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018, and ending June 30th, 2019, and resolution number 2018-072, adopting the appropriations limitations for fiscal year 2018-2019. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. This evening we'll be presenting the draft budget for your consideration based on the workshop or the council meeting we had on May 29th and the direction that we received that evening. So we'll start with a review of our current fiscal year. Current fiscal year, which is the year ending June 30th, 2018. So this is the same information, but it actually is in a little better condition than it was when we presented a month ago. So the beginning balance, of course, is the same, but the projected revenues are an increase of about $300,000 based on current information up to date. That yields a general fund reserve balance projected to be 22.5% at the year end. Again, the expenditures are in essence projected to be the same at $19.8 million. So what that means is for the fiscal year 17-18 ending in a better condition, that allows us a little more flexibility for fiscal year 18-19 as we get into the start of that fiscal year. So again, summaries there, $20.5 million in revenues, expenditures at 19.8, which leads to the increased fund balance in the general fund reserve. As these expenditures are wrapped up, it will take us several months to complete the accounting entries and finish that up and then get into the audit process later this year. Those final numbers are generally presented to the council after the first of the year with the final audit from our auditors, which you approved this evening, our same auditors to continue working for us for another 2 years. So as we get into looking at the fiscal year 18-19, I used this phrase before that we are in a much better situation than we were a year ago, but I wouldn't use the word healthy as of yet, as there's still a number of needs, as we discussed last time, across the organization where there's some serious needs that need to be addressed. Our expenditures are continuing to grow as we see challenges across the organization, but our revenues are growing, and we're seeing some peaks that we haven't seen since 2008. Which is a good thing. Those revenues, property tax, sales tax, as we showed last time, are exceeding the previous high numbers, and that is a good thing. As mentioned, the negotiations with all of our bargaining units, the 6 that we currently have, are ongoing and making good progress, but not yet completed. In the grand scheme of things, I would suggest from my perspective as a city manager, this is the 5th budget that I've presented to the council, and this is by far the best of the previous 5. Those previous 4 were very, very difficult. We were making some very, very painful decisions across the organization with cuts and freezes and really a lot of reductions before it even got to this status. And then this budget has a much better overall tone to it than we've had in the past. And if you recall this meeting a year ago, we were really wrestling with whether we were going to be able to maintain an 18% general fund reserve balance as the council has established as the floor. Thankfully, as we get into this information, we are looking at a much better situation with the ability to meet some of these needs that have been persistent within our community for a very long time, so going on 10 years. So when we first started this process as a city manager, I would use the analogy back several years ago about the rainy day fund and the general fund reserve balance being that rainy day fund, and that it was still raining. Well, I can say that it appears, and I'm not going to hold my breath, but that the rain stopped, the clouds are parting, and we're starting to see some sunshine, a little light at the end of the tunnel. But that doesn't mean that we're completely out of the woods and we can't, go on a spending frenzy, because we're not in that good a shape. However, those 4 primary competing interests that we've been battling with for the past 4 or 5 years, and really goes back almost 10 years, of what this council has indicated of the four primary issues that I see from my perspective that we are able to address, at least in some fashion, this evening in the proposed draft budget, is the ability to give our employees a raise, fund some essential services that have been reduced over the course of the past 10 years, again, preparing for the next rainy day, i.e. adding to the general fund balance, and being balanced in the respect of revenues exceeding expenditures. So those obviously are all competing interests. If we spend too much on one thing, it takes away from the balance of those four things. What we've attempted to do with this budget is to find that fine balance between those competing interests to present something that the council can approve to move forward with our fiscal year that starts next week. And so what's not in the draft budget, as I mentioned, the negotiations are not yet completed, but they are making good progress. We do have the two outstanding lawsuits related to the FLSA that have not been decided. I mentioned this Wayfair Quill decision. For those following the Supreme Court last week, a very, very important Supreme Court decision was issued that, in essence, allows the states to now collect sales tax for those online or internet that do not have a physical presence. So a previous decision from 1992, and this was actually in North Dakota, indicated that you could only charge a sales tax to those businesses that had a physical presence within your state. So that has been the law of the land for the past 26 years. The Supreme Court last week overturned that decision in a decision in South Dakota, the Wayfair decision, which now allows the states to collect sales tax of online purchases. State of California came out almost immediately with some new direction that they will since put the guidelines in place to start that collection as of August 1st. They've, as of today, they've backtracked a little bit, it seems, but in the grand scheme of things, that should lead to, and I put should, because we're going to take about 6 months for us to see what that outcome is, but it should lead to some increased sales tax numbers for us within this current fiscal year. As to when it hits and how much it is, that's a big guess at this point. But our consultant, Muni Services, who does all of our financial analysis on our sales tax, is estimated somewhere in the $100,000 range within the fiscal year. But until we get some better information, that's just very, very big speculation. But just wanted to mention that is some upside that may be out there, depending on a number of factors on the sales tax and how those numbers come to us ultimately. But it's nice to have a little bit of upside. The last item that we discussed at the last meeting was the Deputy Director position of finance that is not included in the draft. From our perspective, really from my perspective, the City Manager, not including it at this time based on the cost as indicated in the staff report, about $51,000 to the general fund, waiting until a couple things happen. One, the electorate considers the Treasurer position in November, and then making sure we get all our negotiations completed, get these other priorities in place and addressed, and then revisit that either at the mid-year or potentially as part of next year's budget. And I would look for council's direction on that. But it's not included as it currently is stated. One other item that's not on the list that we talked about last time was a potential streets position to assist with code enforcement. Unfortunately, after that meeting, we were given some updated information from gas tax. So our gas tax funds took another hit in the forecast for fiscal year 18-19, which is putting some additional funds, some additional pressure on the funding for the gas tax, which is the streets department, which we're very uncomfortable extending those services any further, and the pressure likely will be moving some of those to the general fund. So at this point in time, it's not advised to move forward with that concept until those gas tax funds stabilize, hopefully over the next course of the fiscal year 18-19. Any questions on any of those items that are not included in the current draft budget? All right, so on to the meat of the presentation of what's included in the draft budget. So as we discussed last time, we spent quite a bit of time on the recreation department. So what is included is the recreation coordinator, moving that position from the current year as a part-time position to a full-time position, replacing the current vacant recreation manager, and including the community grant program that was discussed and directed to council to be included in the $20,000 for the TOT program. So from our perspective, those are related, as occurs in Turlock. That TOT grant program is run by the Recreation Department. It would likely be the Recreation Department that would carry out that program, and having staff to implement that program is very important. We do see a direct connection between that TOT program and the need for the rec coordinator to be a full-time position. As discussed last time, and you heard from the audience this evening, the challenges we have in the community on the code enforcement side. One additional code enforcement officer is included in the budget as of July 1. One thing for consideration as I kind of walk through these positions, any delay in the hiring of those positions obviously would result in budget savings. If we were to move the code enforcement position from, say, a July 1 hire to a January 1 hire, obviously that's 6 months of savings for the code enforcement position. That'd be about a $50,000 savings. So that's code enforcement. On the parks, so what was included in the draft that you saw on May 29th was an additional allocation for temp staffing. So that's still included. And then we included 2 additional positions, one on July 1st, one on January 1st. The concept for park maintenance and the maintenance workers would be with the temp staff, we'd be able to hire them immediately to get them on board and start that work literally as soon as next week to address some of the issues that council's all seen about and we've heard from the community, to try to get our parks back in a condition. So get those part-time folks here working. They would work for 6 months between now and the end of the year, December 31st. And then we would start the recruitment for the first position, get that hired hopefully by September 1st, and then do the second recruitment to get them started by January 1st. So when those 2 temporary workers go away, you've got 2 full-time parks workers to get us to a total staffing of 6 folks in the parks department, which again is still 3 less than what we had in 2007, 2008. And again, if we delay that timing by a couple months, that could additionally involve some savings as well. On the police officers, there was a discussion at the last meeting regarding the need for a proactive unit or street crimes unit. Obviously, that is something that staff and this council has expressed an interest in. However, with the challenges we're currently facing, as was mentioned this evening with the recruitment, we've got current, as we mentioned last time, it was 3 vacancies. It's actually now 4 vacancies in the police department. These 2 positions will bring that to 6. Having those all in place within this fiscal year is going to be a challenge. To get to that proactive unit, it's going to take a little longer than 1 year. We'd recommend it's likely going to be a 2-year process. In a perfect world, we'd be able to add 2 positions this year, 3 positions next year, and be able to reconsider implementing that proactive unit within our community. And then the last conversation, I'll start kind of at the bottom there. The fire chief position is included in the budget, and as I noted, they're effectively at 75% based on the timing of when, if we were to start the recruitment now, it's going to take a little bit of time. We did build in some flexibility there with the potential for a conversation with our partners in the MCS, the resource sharing with Modesto. We'd have that conversation first, look for council direction as to how you would like to proceed with the fire chief, but there is sufficient budget to handle that. Either as a full-time position, but likely it's going to take at least 4 months, likely 4 to 6 months to hire a new fire chief in that role. And then lastly, the staff's recommendation, after some thorough analysis of the options that council considered, the 2 options that council asked us to look for, 2 stations staffed at 4.0 or 4-person, or 3 stations staffed at 3.0. What we are recommending is to include the 3.0 staffing at 3 stations with the required restructuring. And so that restructuring, getting the captains, engineers, and firefighters reflective of a 3-station operation. As council recognizes, that's not been the case up until this point. That reclassification changes a captain and 3 engineers down to firefighters and reflects what we would currently staff. So you'd have, in essence, 9 engineers, 9 firefighters, 9 captains. The 2 that I mentioned that are anomalies there, one of the overstaffing for the long-term workers' comp issue with the engineer shows 10, and then the FIU, for the 10th captain. So that is the overall structure of addressing the different issues that were brought up at the last conversation on May 29th, and trying to strike a balance between all those competing interests that we talked about.
Excuse me, Toby.
Yep.
But I thought we talked about 3 police officers because you're going to have to recruit a new SRO because the school district was asking for another SRO.
We had three.
So-
We had 3 vacancies on May 29th. We now have 4 vacancies as it stands today.
Correct, but we were budgeting for 2 new officers plus an SRO, so it'd be 3. That didn't include the ones that have left.
We don't pay for the SRO.
So
Pardon? No, I know, but we pay 25% of it or 20% of it.
the 3 vacancies includes the SRO. The 4th vacancy was an employee who was let go on probation. So as it stands today, with the SRO, there are 4 current vacancies.
So 4 current vacancies plus 2 police officers, so it's 6 positions you're going to be filling?
If you were to approve the budget as it stands tonight, there would be 5 positions available on July 1st and another position available on January 1st.
Okay. I'm just making sure clarification because I know we talked about the SRO and I know that the
That
school
was
district
included
pays
it was
80% of it or something, but
And the SRO funding and expenditures are included in the draft budget.
for the 4th SRO.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So an update on the Measure H with one of those positions that we mentioned on the police, we did include that in the Measure H to use some funding that was available there. So that is 1 additional police officer from what is currently funded through Measure H. The rest of it stays, in essence, the same as we presented on May 29th. And this is what that looks like on the Measure H side of things. The projected fund balance at the end of fiscal year 18-19 would in essence be effectively 0 as we use up the rest of that fund balance as we move forward. And we need to make an expenditure change for next year's budget in 19-20 to maintain a balanced budget there for fiscal year 19-20. Overall, the draft expenditures total for the general fund, $21.6 million. The total budget is well over $70 million. The general fund we're speaking about primarily. When you add Measure H to that, $24.6 million. Looking at the total compensation of that, about 80% of the general fund is reflected from the public safety side of the equation. And with that, the 2 corrections that we provided to you today on the 2 little typos provided there to clarify 2 issues in 2 departments. Department 18 with the 294 should be in 299. It was a $24,000. It doesn't change the overall numbers. It's just where that line item hits, and then a clarification on the basically where the decimal points were on the Human Resources Department 66. So those 2 corrections have been made.
So with that being said, because I know that I'd brought it up to you, this is just basically a recap sheet that's has nothing to do with what the internal thing is as far as reflecting or changing the numbers? You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yes, the overall numbers were correct. That what appeared to be $1 million in advertising in HR was just the formatting of the cell, and what looked like a comma was actually a period.
But it doesn't
change.
Because this is a recap, it doesn't reflect in the overall budget. Even though Patina would love to have $1 million in advertising budget.
Right.
But
that is just a recap of what has been entered into the financial software.
Okay.
Because it's much easier to read than the financial software.
Right, and I just wanted to make sure that it doesn't.
That's correct. She
change
does not have
the
$1 million.
body of it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and that sheet that you're referring to is a roll-up of all fund balances for that.
But it's separate, it's not tied in with an Excel formula to transpose over. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page on that. Okay.
That's correct. So with that, I'm available for any questions you may have. Obviously kept it, we hashed this over pretty thoroughly on May 29th. We've addressed what we feel those issues that the council brought up, and we look for your direction on the approval of the budget this evening.
Are there any questions or comments?
Well,
The full-time, going 20, full-time rec coordinator, I'm still not exactly sold on that, 2020. I know that we added 20 hours because of the situation, and we're gonna hire supposedly a rec manager who's gonna coordinate the TOT. And how much is that position? The rec coordinator.
The rec coordinator, the difference or the total cost?
The total cost. What we're burdened.
So currently, they're full-time, non-benefited. The fully burdened cost, I'm going to guess, I think it was 65. Does that sound right, Suzanne? Somewhere in that range? Fully burdened, around 60-ish? But we're already paying more than half of that, plus it reduces some temp staffing as well. In order for us to carry out the TOT program that the council's requested, we need some additional staff because staff does not have the time to implement that program. So if we're not going to fund that program, we're that position, we would strongly recommend not doing the TOT this year because we don't have the staffing to carry that program out.
With the TOT, say for some reason we hire a rec manager and the TOT program that Councilman Rhino and myself sat on, are you okay with that? Can I ask you that question?
Am I
In regards
okay
to
with
the rec manager taking over the TOT?
No, because I think he was saying the rec coordinator was going to do it. And instead of hiring a rec manager, I would like to look at a director of Parks and Recreation, actually, and move Parks from Public Works back over to Recreation where it was. And then that director could be a working director who would be doing what potentially a new manager would do, but you would get more bang for your buck, and you would be taking some of the pressure off of Public Works by moving Parks back over to Recreation.
And would they be housed in this building here?
Yes.
See, because part of my problem is with this, and I probably should have had some communication with, when I'm looking at this and how much we pay for this community center and how much red we're continuing to go into, right?
We've reduced that number significantly in this fiscal year, and in the next fiscal year, that number would be eliminated.
Then will be eliminated.
Correct.
Well, I guess because, we have to we don't have to we have to look at how we're doing business here. So instead of going out, and this is just my opinion, I'm one of 5, that to, one or the other, or really not even one or the other, to not do anything with this here right now until we really get a good understanding of what we're doing in this building.
So to not do the rec coordinator or the rec manager?
We'll just still keep it 20 hours and give them 20 more hours for now, what we're doing right now currently.
We can only do that for the month of June. We can't do that any longer without violating the Affordable Care Act.
Well, then give them 20 hours.
So my question to Councilmember Rhino is, when you were saying you want a director of Parks and Rec, would that mean that director would be in charge of the park maintenance?
Yes. Just like many years ago, we had a director of Parks and Recreation, and they oversaw parks personnel and the upkeep of the parks as well as the recreation and the different programs.
I'm just asking for
an increase.
Yeah, that's what we
With you
did.
moving it out of one department into another, I just want a clarification.
Yes.
So the director of Parks and Rec would be in charge of park maintenance.
Correct.
Would that include Smyrna Park, the ball field?
Yes.
Okay.
Because technically now when we have any kind of discussion with CYB or anything, it was always Ms. Ferris who came and gave us the updates on it, so it would still be recreation.
And now it's
CYB, it's
Jeremy.
currently, it's
Jeremy.
co.
Right,
It's
but
between
it's-
Public Works and Recreation.
But it has been Ms. Ferris before. She's had some kind of interaction.
She's had
with
interaction,
it.
obviously. They're administrating, but so is Jeremy. This is the primary, with the current contract, CYB contract is currently being handled by Jeremy in the Public Works Department.
I'm not trying to make any confusion on this. I'm just saying, I haven't always been good with the rec manager. Being on the TOT, that does make some sense, but what if that just doesn't work out in regards to the
What
TOT?
if it doesn't?
Well, I'm just saying, to have the rec manager taking care of the TOT, I know we have $20,000 that's going to be able to go back within the community to try to get businesses and people to see the series factor, but I'm just not sold on that. You know what, and I'm going to say it right now for some of the people that are listening here, I think it looks great. How we can hire 6 police officers, and we need to do it fast, is very important for this community. And I think 3 is better than 2. 3 staffing is better than 2 stations. And, it's that's what our community needs. It's just a matter of obviously passing this budget, but I'm just not sold on rec manager.
So to kind of address Councilman Rhino's, she and I had talked about that. That is a long-term goal of mine as well to get there. To get there from where we're at today is very difficult. I still think the rec manager position is critical to the operation of this facility as well as our recreation department. If you're not going to allow us to hire that position, we will have to eliminate programs. We cannot continue to operate this facility the way we're operating it without that position. So it's the elimination of program if you don't want to hire the rec manager, go through a longer process. It's going to take us some time with everything that's on our agenda as it currently stands. Our strong recommendation is to continue with those two positions to keep moving forward. In a perfect world, that rec manager has the skill set that could move into a director position. It doesn't have to happen today. We need some time to get that put together because making a change like that is pretty significant, and it's likely a cost increase, not a cost saving for that director position, because a fully burdened director position is going to be more expensive than a manager position.
Councilmember Rhino?
Well, maybe we shouldn't even look at hiring anyone until we are through with negotiations and we make sure that our employees that have been without a pay raise for 10 years get a pay raise. Maybe that's really what we need to look at.
Well, along those lines, one of the comments or suggestions I was going to make was, with the exception of, and this is just my opinion, the police positions and the fire chief, which I think we should try to get immediately. The other ones we wait until maybe September sometime when we've gone through the negotiations, and then we readdress those positions and say, not the two I talked about, all the other ones, and say, yes, we're still good with moving forward with those.
Well, actually, I have, if we could do a continuing resolution and recruit immediately for the fire chief.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that the police were understaffed as well, and those obviously public safety need to be addressed, but I honestly can't see how we can hire additional employees when we haven't finished negotiations.
You could, just as a statement, you could approve the budget as presented with those positions and give staff direction to not hire those positions, and the budget is then kind of built-in conservative because those costs are not going to be reflected until we start that process.
Well,
So,
why couldn't we do a continuing resolution?
continuing resolution is a lot of work for staff that's already overworked. You're asking for staff to continue an existing budget that has a number of changes that are already built. We've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours putting a budget together that the only difference is when those positions are hired, and that is savings to the budget, not expenditures, and it would save staff a tremendous amount of time to approve the budget as presented and just give us direction to not hire those positions.
Well, I guess once the budget is printed out, I would be worried that somehow it could slip through the cracks and we could recruit. I mean, for my own, I guess, my own safety, not safety, but my own peace of mind, I still don't see why we couldn't do a continuing resolution. I mean,
Well,
we
we
did
absolutely
it
can.
two
We're
years
just-
ago.
We did it for a week 2 years ago.
Okay,
It was
well,
1
we can
week.
do it for longer than a week.
Again, it's creating more work for staff, and with a budget that's already put together and ready to go.
Staff, is that, or Ms. Dean, is that a big problem for you to do a continuing resolution?
It would take me a couple of days, but it is possible to do, yes.
Well, now, I mean, listen to this. I agree with my two colleagues on both sides of me that we need to start the recruitment and continue recruitment for the police officers. School's getting ready to start. We need another SRO. We need that stuff in place. I said at the last meeting, we did what we did with the city manager and split up the director of public safety. I think we need to recruit for the police chief. I think that's the fire chief, excuse me. I think it's essential for our department. The only concern I have is I agree with Councilmember Rhino, and I look at last year, we had a budget workshop, I believe it was like in March, and then we had a discussion come back about April or May, and then we did this. I mean, we've crammed everything we're doing for this budget in the month of June and July. I mean, May, the last part of May and June. So all these questions are coming up, and yet we're supposed to react to them right now. You know, we haven't had, you know, this, a long-term discussion on this stuff. And, you know, a couple of us were on vacation a couple of weeks ago, so we, you know, we didn't have the opportunity. So, I agree. I mean, I'm one that wants 3-0 staffing at 3 stations. I think that's essential for the city. You know, I have 2 concerns. One is Pecos gets the most calls, but Service Road is essentially in the city limits, you know. And that is a station that the city of Ceres built and put in place. The downfall of that one is it probably gets 1,000 calls a year compared to the other one.
500.
Yeah.
500. Less than 500.
And
445.
compared to the other one, it gets 3,000 calls a month. No. You know, I'm just saying there's a widespread. I don't have the
3,000 per
figures
year.
in front of me, but you know, it's there. Okay, I don't have the actual calls. I mean, we have been provided it, but you know, I think that we need to get the police officers recruited, and we need to get the fire chief.
I would agree with you. At the last time when we had this discussion, I wanted to see the numbers for two stations with four staffing on those, and after looking at the numbers and the response time, I agree. I think with Vice Mayor Klein that I think the best scenario for us now is 3-0. However, and I think we need to get a fire chief in place as soon as possible. But the thing that I think that we're still missing even with that is a plan, a logistics plan. Overtime is out of control, appears to be. Now, maybe I'm wrong there, but just hear me out, okay? But I can be convinced differently. Obviously, I've changed from the last meeting, but I really want to see a logistics plan. I hear Pecos, I hear Service Road. Are those really the best? I mean, ultimately, my feeling is we need to have a look at the Pecos station and say, is that ideally situated? Should we continue to be involved in that station? We have arrangements with our partners that we have to see how that's going to impact everything. And so I would like someone to come in and say, okay, here's how we've been doing business, and there's a better way to do this, or there's more operational efficiency. We haven't seen that. At least I haven't seen that, and I think that needs to be done. So for me, as I go through the budget, timing-wise of some of these positions, I'm okay with holding on some of them, pending council flexibility or comfort level, I should say. When it comes to the fire chief and the police officers, I think those need to be recruited and hired as soon as possible. But I do, again, want to say that I believe that we need to stay at 3 stations open, and we can logistically look at how that all plays out. At least that's my opinion. So,
and obviously the relationship between the fire chief and that conversation is very important. To create a long-range plan, that fire chief is instrumental to that conversation. So, I see those as intimately related and directly connected. So, once you give us direction on the fire chief component, then we can create a timeline and get with our resource sharing partners to ensure we create, what plan makes the most sense for delivering the most efficient fire service to the city of Ceres.
Sure. Councilmember Lane?
Excuse me. I would agree with what we're saying here now, Mayor, and hearing from other colleagues. The fire staffing, as far as the 3-0, I'm completely on board. I wasn't, but I am. You did convince me of that, by the way. Still have issues as far as, and the only reason why is because I think Councilman or Vice Mayor Klein brought it up regarding the Pecos and Service Road. I think that's another discussion, honestly, we got to get this other issue done first, but I think that would be for a fire chief to come in and really look over our organization and possibly make those calls at that time. Would make those calls, and I think with our sharing and that sort of thing. I don't want the folks out here to think they're going to be without any fire services, because we're not going to do that to you. 3O staffing, I think, is very important. Again, I think we got negotiations going on. I just want to make sure that, you know, through these negotiations that everybody somewhat benefits. We don't overspend by hiring more staff that we can't afford and not be able to give raises. I think that's real important. I agree that two police officers, along with the other 4, we need to start recruiting as soon as possible. And I know, Chief, that you're doing that now, and I know it's very difficult, but that should be a #1 priority for us as a council and as a city. So, you know, the park maintenance, I think you've got that in there. Obviously, we got to deal with the issues that are happening out there and keep water on, because we can't let the fire guys keep putting flames out in the fires because they're dead, or the lawns are dead. Anyway, I know we had problems there. So the recreational, I know I'm going backwards on this. The recreational, I think you know, there may be a need there, right? There probably is a need there. But at the same time, I think the question came up just now. You know, I remember it as Parks, and Rec was a director position and a working director.
It was eliminated as part of the
we eliminated,
layoffs, right.
you know.
So 22 positions were eliminated.
And I don't know,
in
you know,
07,
if that's the way to go now or not, but I think it's something we could talk about, certainly. This grant person, obviously it's 20 hours. If we don't do it ends up being 20 hours, or we're gonna have to do something with that position at the end of, or not, right? You're gonna have a 20-hour position.
As of right now, in
You're
fiscal
40
year
right now
1780, it's a
till the
part-time position.
29th, right?
Correct. The end of this month, it has to go back
So
down to
that's
20 hours
really
a week.
gonna limit.
What we can do in this building, yes.
Right, so, I mean, I would be okay, I think, with going with the full-time,
It's a fully burdened cost.
Fully burdened
is
coordinator.
$58,000 for the rec coordinator.
yeah, I'd
$58,000.
probably be okay with that and hold off on the rec manager at this point until we decide possibly what we're gonna do with that position. So with that being said, you know, the budget itself, the fire's probably the biggest issue, other than it's gotta be 3O staffing and how we're gonna get there. You've laid it out. I think that's just kind of a holdback until we see where these negotiations go for me. But we're gonna have to go 3O, and, you know, if that means taking possibly and I'm just talking out loud, our general fund reserves down 1% to get there. After it, I don't know. That might have to be a conversation that needs to be had. I don't know. I don't know where we're going to go with negotiations.
With each negotiation, as I mentioned, there's 6 bargaining units, and each of those negotiations is unique to that particular bargaining unit.
Right.
Once we get an agreement with each of those units, that agreement will come back to council for ratification, and it will accompany a budget amendment. So that budget amendment will reflect both the timing of when that comes into play and the cost implications of this negotiation. So when each of those come, and it's, you know, they'll likely come separately. They're not going to come all at once just because of where we're at in the process with each group. You'll be presented with a budget amendment that goes with that implications of the negotiations. So you'll have an idea with each group where we stand on the overall budget picture. Is if we were to approve a budget tonight, you know, it'll get amended with each ratification of those agreements.
So right now, being 3O staffing, which I think I've heard from everybody, that's where we want to go, with 3 stations. What's going to be the implication after tonight if we say hold that until, you know, September? Is that going to be meaning more overtime, or are you going to be able to do?
Hold meaning do not hire the fire positions until September?
I think that's what I was kind of hearing.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what I'm looking for clarification on.
I was actually going to ask the question when we talked about the police positions and the fire chief, did we want to include in the continuing resolution the positions to make the 3O happen now, kind of as, you know, as part of public safety,
Right.
and then do the continuing resolution, and then after negotiations, then revisit everything else.
So when you're saying that, saying 3O staffing and the restructuring right now?
No, not the restructuring, just we know we want to implement the 3.0, but we also need 2 positions that are vacant, right? And then two other positions, or one?
For fire to get to 3.0 staffing at 3 stations, there's 4 firefighter positions that would need to be hired.
2 are vacant, and then 2 new ones.
Correct. Well,
And does that include the restructuring?
yes. The budget is built on the basis of the restructuring, yes.
On that savings.
Correct.
I'm going to try to talk you guys into it right now.
Into what?
Hiring them now.
Okay, so you want to do a continuing resolution and include those, the fire
I'm going to
and
say
the
that we need to
police?
include the fire now because, to my understanding, there's a couple gentlemen out there that have worked on the SAFER grant, that if we don't hire these people, we could lose them. They already know Series. They're on the very bottom. They're a
They're already
firefighter.
trained, correct.
Well, and plus we'll have a savings in overtime by doing that.
Exactly.
Correct.
That's what the
Exactly. And
point
that was my
was.
second note,
Yeah.
is, how much money are we spending overtime? Right now, we're doing 3.0 staffing, right now.
Correct.
And we're paying a lot of overtime.
Yes.
Right.
And so we're going to do it. I say we just do it.
Well, then maybe we need to do the continuing resolution after we've heard from everyone to hire the fire chief and those positions for fire, and then the police, and then come back after negotiations and do the rest of the budget.
I like it.
One clarification on the park. So you're saying not to do the permanent park positions, but we had included in the original draft the $50,000 for the temporary parks workers. I'm assuming that's still okay, but I want to make sure. Because those are temporary employees. They can go away at any point in time, but we need those bodies to
Yeah, and we could
get our
change those
parks.
July 1st dates and January 1st dates, right? I mean, they
Yeah,
could
we
be
could push
changed
those
down
to
the
both
road.
to, I mean, obviously from our perspective, if you're concerned about the hiring, we would prefer to keep
What
them in the
was that,
budget
like,
and move to January.
If I remember, was that like $50,000 in the budget or something for those?
For which ones?
For the temporary park?
Yeah, it's about $40,000
Okay.
per 6, so $80,000 for a full
okay.
year, $40,000 for 6 months.
You know,
If
Well,
we
I
were to
think they
move
need
that,
help.
move the July 1 to a January 1, there's a $40,000 savings.
At this time, I want to open it up to the public, as we've been doing a lot of talking up here, and get some input from them. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the speaker cards, the people that were so patiently waiting. And I'll start with Lourdes Perez.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. As stated, my name is Lourdes Perez. I'm a resident of Ceres, District Number 2. I am here to speak on the budget proposal, which includes cuts to the fire department, which I strongly disagree with and urge the City Council to reconsider. I'm extremely happy to hear your conversations tonight. In 2007, I was one of the citizens who was heavily involved in supporting Measure H, a public safety measure. As many citizens, I volunteered numerous hours to advocate and speak to others about the importance of passing the measure. With overwhelming response, citizens of Ceres voted in favor. This was to guarantee staff for 4 fire stations and to provide adequate resources to protect public safety. Not only did I feel inclined to help with Measure H, because I felt it was my duty as a responsible citizen, but because this was a personal issue of importance. My parents' home burned down completely on Christmas Day of 1998. My brother, his wife, and newly born child lived with my parents at the time. My family survived the fire only due to courageous, caring firefighters who aided them and led them to a safe rescue. My brother and 3-month-old nephew were rescued by the firefighters just seconds before the heater in the home exploded, devouring the home in flames. My nephew today, I am proud to say, has been an outstanding young man who values life. He is a UC Davis student, and I would not be able to tell this story had it not been for firefighters who risked their own lives to save my family's lives. In March of this year, this council voted to reduce resources allocated to the department and close Fire Station Number 3. This decision directly impacted me as a resident who lives near this station. My sense of safety vanished with the closure of the Fire Station 3, knowing that response time increases as services come from other fire stations, and knowing that we have less firefighters to respond to emergencies. For the last 10 years, I have been hearing about the city's budget constraints and operating in deficit. This year, for the first time, I hear that the city has financial growth and expects a balanced budget. So I ask, how can this council be considering to impact negatively the lives of 60,000 people that our fire department serves? With the closure of Fire Station number 3 and now considering the closure of Fire Station number 2. Not only is this troubling to me, but it reminds me of a term that I was recently reintroduced to, the term redlining. This was racial discrimination in mortgage lending in the 1930s, which shaped the demographic and wealth patterns of American communities. Recently, a new study showed that 3 out of 4 neighborhoods redlined on government maps 80 years ago continue to struggle economically. Redlining was banned 50 years ago, but it's still hurting minorities today because our leaders continue to disinvest in areas of high need and create greater equity gaps. I implore and pray that God touches your hearts and guides your minds to look into the reality and the impact of your decision of scaling down resources in an already underserved area. This has implications not only in current times, but into future generations for the entire community of Ceres. I felt proud of living in Ceres during the general plan update process, and I heard a sense of pride in others when they spoke of their desire for Ceres to become a healthy, vibrant community with economic vitality. You, the City Council, adopted the vision statement in the general plan update in 2016, which states Ceres has ample job opportunities, and further states in Ceres people enjoy a safe and healthy city. In conclusion, I've had many opportunities to collaborate with the fire department staff through many coalitions here in the county, school events, and other community events focused on child safety and communities. Every time I have witnessed their commitment to this community, and I ask that you hold to the promise of Measure H for the improvement of Ceres Police, Fire, 911 emergency response. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is Renee Gaskell.
When residents call 911, who always comes and is the first to arrive? Firemen and police, no matter what. Response time is critical when it comes to protecting people and to help in critical times of need. Medical emergencies and house fires in our area can quickly escalate, which is related to response time. Minimizing damage and protecting the lives of our citizens is most important, and 7 minutes is too long for an emergency. A friend of mine, her daughter was saved by a police officer and a fireman in response times that do not exceed 3 minutes several years ago in the city of Ceres. 2 months ago, we had a fire 1 street over, and the response time was fabulous. We had Stanislaus County, we had Modesto, we had Ceres, surrounding areas, all assisted, everyone worked together, and I think our neighborhood really felt like we were being protected. But when we have to wait for a phone call and we have to wait for fire trucks to come from another area because we have shut down a station that's closer, that's just inconceivable to me. You know, 4 stations, we have a big area, and we as citizens deserve to be able to utilize those areas. Maybe we don't staff all of them all the time. Maybe the one that gets the least amount of calls gets some high use time, you know, collectively moving people around as needed for that kind of assistance. Yeah, like the 4th of July, something like those times when we use it. Let's see here. To continue to decrease staffing and stations in Ceres isn't fair to our surrounding communities. Turlock, Modesto, Stanislaus, Houston, we all are working together to reduce call times and to be there for our citizens. And working as a community with our police and our fire is just so important. I've lived here my entire life. I'm proud to say I'm from Ceres, we need to be better than what we've been. We need to show our citizens and surrounding areas that while we may be small, we are not stupid and we value our people. And, you know, we all have a vested interest in this. House fires can certainly spread very quickly from site to site as we are all packed in here sometimes very closely. Our fire departments and our police departments also have a greater good in helping our communities be more close-knit. Having our firemen volunteer and be part of our baseball organization for the little kids is great for them to get some great experience with talking to them. They have less fear of them and they're more willing to go to them in times of need. And our firemen and our police officers do a great job of really reaching out to the community and being a part of it. And I think that to limit what they do or to not have them be able to do those kinds of things out in the community actually hurts us more than what you may realize, because our kids are looking up to them and they need those types of people around so that we can all feel safer and we can feel like we have the opportunities to make ourselves better, make our city better, and the police and fire departments do that for us. Thank you.
Avery Jackson.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak again. I was up here 2 weeks ago talking about money for our police officers, more police officers for the street. And I'm listening to all this budgeting and everything. I know Measure H was passed in 2007, and that was supposed to be for fire, police, and 911 services. And that was 11 years ago, and nothing's been improved. It seems like everything's failing, you know? We need a real street crimes unit. I brought that up a couple of weeks ago. You know, Measure H was supposed to fund a sergeant and 4 officers for the street crimes unit, and now we're being told that it's probably going to take another 2 years to get the street crimes unit going. You know, I don't feel that's acceptable. You know, spend all the time that we've had Measure H and nothing's been done. As far as trying to get more officers, what are we going to do to raise the wages, to make the wages competitive to other agencies? Because we spend a good money training these officers, but it seems like I said, we're losing them to probation, or they're just using Ceres as a stepping stool to move on to other agencies where they're getting paid more. You know, like I said, they have to pay 7.5% to Social Security and Medi-Cal and 14% of their checks to retirement before taxes, and after taxes, they'll spend 40 to 50% of their check. So, I mean, in order to get more officers, we're going to have to make the wages more compatible to other agencies. So we're going to have to increase the wages. I mean, if we keep the wages where we're at, we're not going to get no more officers because, like you said, ain't nobody applying. So how are we going to make it attractive for them to apply? Another thing that's going on is because of the shortage of officers, we got half-assed police work. And what I mean by that is officers will pull over somebody who's driving on suspended license, who shouldn't be driving, okay? But then they ain't got time to have the car towed or take care of that because they have other calls they have to go to. Or they're pulling over people who have warrants and they don't have time to take these people off the streets because they don't have time to leave the streets to actually do the police work they should be doing. Okay, so basically that's all I have to say right now is just that what are we going to do to get our officers more money?
James Walter?
You know, you want to hire more officers, but you're not paying them enough money, so how are you going to get more officers? I mean, you need to give them more money. They need more money. 10 years with no raise, that's a long time. So all I'm saying is they need more money. I mean, you want to hire more officers, but you need to pay them more money to make them stay here. That's just what I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, anyone else that would like to speak, please come forth, state your name for the record.
Leonard Shepard. I'm glad you decided on the 3-0 staffing. I would love to see 4-0 and 6 on the truck and all that stuff, but we don't have it. I keep saying, looking back into the past, things that they did 20 years ago, decisions they made, are now coming to roost on the city of Ceres. Having more and more people come and live in the city of Ceres, more houses, more people, more need for service. And I think that right now we have to come to a realization that we're going to be a training pit for the rest of the police and fire service. It's just that's the way it is. I've seen other towns do the same thing. We can't pay the wages. We're barely able to keep what we've got. Even if we hire 2 or 3 more people, that's just going to be a replacement for the ones who finally get offers and leave. So I don't know. I don't have any answers for it. I just think that we've gotten ourselves into a situation that's almost maybe when Save Mart and Walmart and all that gets in, we'll have some more tax money and stuff. And the people who have condemned Measure H haven't had to sit on the Measure H board and look at everything. It's easy to condemn from the sideline to Monday morning quarterback, but we did everything possible on Measure H, because I sat on that committee, to do things right. I've heard all kinds of, the first people started just gave money away. It wasn't that way. Measure H was not designed to be the end all for hiring people and stuff. It always depended on sales tax. It always depended on how people spent money and how much it got. And it was never, even though I don't even remember being touted to be a street crimes or anything else, it was just to improve the city's fire and police department. That's all I remember, and I voted for it, and I campaigned for it. So what people think that it meant back in, 2007, isn't the reality of what it can do. I applaud Measure H and the people who sit on that committee and try to figure out how they can disperse that money completely legally. So, and I just think that we're in a hard spot, but keeping the 3-0 staffing is going to, I'd love to see 3-0 and all 4 stations, if we could do it. But right now, the reality is we can't.
Good evening, Mike Miller, President of Ceres Firefighters Local 3636. I want to personally reach out to all of you. Sounds like you're in support of 3-person companies with 3 stations open. It is vitally important to our operation to have that 3rd station. Appreciate your support on that. Sounds like you're wanting to move forward with immediately open up the hiring process so we can get some people hired. I'm hoping that's what I understood. we're at a point where I never thought I would see a day when I would be tired of seeing overtime, but that day has come, and there is not a single person in our department that isn't overworked right now. We desperately need to get some people on board. We're missing a lot of time off with our families, and it's very important to these guys. A lot of them have young children. I'm here on my daughter's 21st birthday today, so I appreciate your support. Thank you.
My name's Lee Brandt, and I had this big old speech, but you guys just kind of blew it for me. But I'm in total support of the 3-0. I don't know what we can do about, everybody talks about, giving the police and fire more money. I agree with Mike Miller about you do get burned out if you work way too much overtime. I did it years ago, and it just burned out. You got too much. And I don't know. I don't have the answer for any of it. I'm on the Measure H, and I'm just learning it. But I know from years ago, as you guys know, that I used to work for the city, and Councilwoman Rhino will probably remember, we loved working here. This place was a fun place to work at. I mean, we had like barbecues, and I went off on this at the Measure H meeting, and Toby just kind of stood there and looked at me, but he wasn't here for it. This place used to be an awesome place to work. It's no longer that way. The morale for the employees is in the pits. I mean, Linda said it earlier, they haven't had a raise in 10 years or, whatever, but sometimes it's not the money. Sometimes it's the environment. So my hat's off to you guys for, doing the 3-0, but anyway, take care.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, Mr. Wells, and community. Really quick, I'd like my community to stand up. If you live over in the South Modesto area where Fire Station 16, please stand up. Okay, those are people. Those are some of our people, real faces, real people that rely on Station 16. Friday evening, we had a fire. And I'm looking out my back door, and I'm like, oh my God, there's a fire, and I can see it right down the way. Call 911. They asked, if I know exactly where the fire is. I said, well, I can give an approximation. They asked if I know if there's anyone in the house. Well, luckily, the house was abandoned, unfortunately. Happened to belong to a family member, friend that I know. So it was just very sad, and unfortunate circumstances led to that. But really what I'm more concerned with, and I think I gave that concern to you in my letter, and I really want to make sure that we understand clearly that we are a DUC, a duck. We're a disadvantaged, underserved community, which in your general plan, you agreed to give us like or similar services when it came to water, stormwater, sewer, and to fire services. Your ISO rating currently is number 3, and which is really good. 1 being, of course, the absolute best, 10 being the worst. And I have to commend your fire staff, the Fire Association members of 3636. They are outstanding. I truly mean this. They are outstanding. They went above and beyond. Luckily, we also had Modesto Fire that came in, so I applaud them as well because they were essential in making sure that in this particular area where this house was located, that it did not go any further. It was contained. And trust me, I was out there yelling at people, do not go down the alleyway, stay away from here, do not this, get out of the way, because to me, it's important. It's extremely essential that our firemen are able to do their job and to do it well. And I applaud them for their hard work. I stuck around. I talked to them. I talked to some of the firemen from the other department, and I can tell you that these guys work hard. It was over 100 degrees, and they're out there in full suit and full armor doing their job. and they're telling me, thank you for supporting us. No, I'm saying thank them for keeping our houses safe. In our community, unfortunately, many people do not have the economic ability to pay for insurance. My house, we happen to be able to. I was very fortunate. My father was a government employee for 38 years, and we were very fortunate. We have a really good financial basis. A lot of our community does not, and you can tell by the disrepair that some of these houses fall into. Your homes, I'm sure that you have wonderful homes, and I even had one firefighter, not from here, but from another fire station in Modesto, tell me that he went out to a local council member's house, and he goes, let my house burn. I've got insurance. And I mean, I thought to myself, how ridiculous of a comment is that? Because first of all, they're prohibiting somebody from doing their job. These guys didn't just sign on to just be here. They signed on to do a job and to do it well to the best of their ability. And yes, they have not had raises, but I can tell you that not one of these firefighters that was out there Friday night shirked their duties or said, I'm only going to go up to here, do it. I'm only going to throw out this much water. They had a little trouble finding where some of our hydrants were, but they did an impeccable job. And I want to see them to be able to continue their job and to do it well. I want to see respect given to them and the job that they do, because they deserve it. Any person who does and puts their life on the line, firefighters, law enforcement, I commend them for the choice that they made. I couldn't do it, and I know many people in the community would not choose that, but they chose it, and they chose well, because every single firefighter that I have spoken to with Station 16, their integrity is above reproach. So please keep that in mind when you're looking at what you're going to do for your budget. And please remember that you promised to maintain our services, because we eventually will be part of Ceres. So I shop Ceres. Like I said to you, I shop Ceres because I want my tax money to go to your Ceres of city.
You finish up your comments. Your 5 minutes are up.
Yes, I see that. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else?
Don Donaldson. Aren't we glad that we have a military to protect the United States? Aren't we proud that we have a fire and police to protect Ceres? 2 minutes and 30 seconds is a recommended time for a fireman or a policeman so you can make it through a heart attack. You people up here took an oath that you would protect the people of Ceres. If that takes more fire department, if that takes more police, that's your job, to figure out a way that we can protect the people that you promised that you would protect. So please do the best you can to get this done. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Angie Smith, and I think the importance of having more fire departments is not only for fire but for medical, because there isn't always an ambulance available to be at the call. Working in the emergency room for 17 years, I would see the ambulances lined up, not able to leave because the ERs are impacted. So if we don't have an ambulance when something happens, having the fire department come out for the medical emergency is our best hope. So please consider even keeping 4 fire stations for medical. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Good evening. My name's Angela Huerta. I just wanted to mention that used to be called Industrial Fire Department years ago. And there was a lot of volunteers. And I don't know if there's volunteers in the city of Ceres, but maybe it can be looked at to help offset overtime. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ann Thatcher, and I just wanted to thank you for not reducing to 2 stations, and I hear that you're really committed to 3. And if we had the funding to do 4, we'd do 4. But I think leaving it up to the future fire chief, thank you, the future fire chief to work with you and decide what would be best to keep our city safe is the best decision we can make today. So I just wanted to thank you very much for that. On the other side, I wanted to talk about recreation. I'm not sure if anybody here or in the community here that's here today has participated in recreation. I know I put all of my grandchildren through the swim program, and I'm looking at doing that again for another grandchild. The city has a great recreation program, and I'm just not sure if losing a recreation manager is going to be a deterrent in us not hiring that. Maybe they're a revenue producer, those kinds of things to help keep us getting into the black. Because if you don't have the salespeople to bring in the revenue, then you're going to be defeating the purpose of what we want to try and achieve of getting into the black. So I just wanted to, I don't know if they can provide you with some statistics on that and some future, budget aspirations, those kinds of things. That's all. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Okay. Well, with that, I will close the public hearing. I just wanted to address a couple of the items that were on here. There was some questions about Measure H, and I think it was brought up by Mr. Shepard. 100% of the Measure H money goes for public safety, police, and fire. There's nowhere else that it's going. So to say that it's being siphoned off for something else is not true. We're using 100% of that money. But as Mr. Shepard mentioned, it all is basically related to sales tax. The amount that was originally estimated for sales tax has not come to fruition, so obviously it's not as much as we would hope for, but it is being spent for that. The other comment I'd like to make is everyone looks at the budget and the numbers look great today. That's true, but most of that is single-handedly related to cannabis. So if you're an anti-cannabis person out there, you might want to change your habits or your ways, because $2 million of the budget in here is related to cannabis. So all the positions we're talking about and all the things we're doing, if the federal government comes in tomorrow and says we're ceasing all operations, we're back here talking about a different budget, because $2 million would go away. So I want to set the record straight for that. It's not like everything else has gotten overly rosy. It's those difficult decisions that we took for that has helped the budget. And then the last thing I say is, for someone to make a comment that any of the decisions we're doing on the budget is racially motivated, I personally take offense to that. Nothing that we are doing on our decision up here is racially motivated. It's due because we have a job to keep the city solvent. And if you weren't taught at an age that when you only have $1, you don't spend 2, that's where we have a responsibility. We all would love 6 fire stations out here and 200 police officers, but we have to live within the revenue of the money that we have. And when you understand that the general fund budget, we cannot commingle funds with water and sewer and other things. It's against the law. We can't do that. There are jurisdictions that have done it, but it's against the law. We have to use the money that comes into the general fund. 90% goes to police and fire, and most of that is for salaries. The other roughly 10% or so is for public or for recreation. So it's a give and take. We can only play within the sandbox that we have. So I just wanted to lay those parameters out there. It's not like we're sitting here saying that we're going to take money from some other area and not give it to police and fire. We're giving all that we can to police and fire. And so when you hear us talk about wanting to give raises, if we want to give raises, that means we can't have positions. It's a give and take. So I wanted to clarify that, and I do have some comments from my colleagues. Vice Mayor Klein?
Well, you know, I sit here and I've lived here probably pretty close to my whole life. I was born at the old Memorial Hospital. I've seen big transformations within this city. You know, my grandfather and my dad passed away a few months ago, and I'm going through my dad's stuff. My grandfather was the assistant fire chief for City of Ceres back in the 30s and the 40s. He was 100% volunteer. I'm the only one on this council that was a volunteer fireman for the City of Ceres when it was a volunteer with a paid chief and one paid firefighter that worked Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. That station was the old police department station. We had the jail inside the fire department. And you look at the transformation that this city has made over the course of those years. I worked graveyard, and when the tones went off on our pager, you had your paid firefighter, and you might get 2 volunteers. So we have made tremendous strides in this city. You turn around, and I reflect when people saying things about being volunteers. I have a friend of mine, his dad was a volunteer for Westport Fire Department. A tones went off, the Honor Farm caught on fire, he seen nobody following the fire truck, he went, he fell in the roof, got caught, and he burned. We have a battalion chief that knows that family very well out in the Westport area. You know, so we have done a lot of strides and made a lot of changes here. You know, you look at the police department with the crimes unit and the drug task force and, you know, for stolen vehicles. You know, when I first got on this council, the previous city manager, which was the director of public safety, was trying to balance a budget, and he made those budget cuts because that's where he felt the need was to make those budget cuts. And to try to get back to that staffing and everything else, the number one thing that our resources is we need resources in tax revenue. That's what it is. The bottom line is tax revenue is what drives the city operation. Whether it's property tax, sales tax, it does. And if Mr. Wells would put that 5-year plan on there, and you look at it, the mayor alluded to cannabis. There's 2 things on there, and it's like line 5 or 6, case and patient first. Excuse me. In 2017-18, you can see $920,000 in cannabis revenue. This year, for the projected budget, is $1.6 million. Next year, it's $2 million. Those development agreements with those entities end in 2020 and 21. We have to renegotiate the development agreements. You know, we're putting together a tax proposal right now to be on the budget. So if those development agreements go away, we get tax revenue. The only people that will pay that tax is the people that buy the cannabis. But medical cannabis is non-taxable. So we're relying and we're looking at that, and you can see the significant drop of $1.1 million in revenue if those development agreements and all that stuff doesn't come into place. And then what's that going to do to our budget? You know, and it's really a shame that that's what it's came to. You know, it really is. That we're relying on that money. And to sit up here at the age I am, thinking about that, what was big in the 60s and the 70s, now we're relying on that revenue. It's tough. It's tough to sit there and say, hey, we need that. So, you know, like somebody said out there, you know, you buy everything in the City of Ceres because that's where the tax revenue is. But how many people in the city drive to Modesto or drive to Turlock and do some shopping? And every time they do that, we lose tax revenue. The city of Turlock gets it. The city of Modesto gets it. And elsewhere. I mean, it is very tough. You know, you heard us tonight telling the chief to hire those positions, fill them, same with the fire. But, you know, last time we talked to him, and, you know, you can talk about wages, but when he only gets 5 applications, it's sad. Because years ago, you'd get 30 or 40. And for fire, you're going to get thousands. Everybody wants to be a fireman. Okay? I mean, they want to be a fireman. They don't get shot at. They don't get people yelling at them. You know? I mean, realistically, that's reality. And, you know, our parents taught us to respect the police force. Nowadays, you stop and think about, and I'm generalizing, how many people out there don't respect the police force. And it's tough. And you can say it starts at home, but I think it's like somebody said a while back, it takes a village to raise an individual. You know, you can point fingers and blame the parents and everything like that, but it's also what they see out there in the community as disrespectful. You know, it's tough. In this day and age, I don't want to be a police officer. 35 years ago, be a completely different story. So, you know, my hat's off to the police force for what they put themselves through, what they do. It's just a shame that we cannot get people to even apply, to take the test, to go through the interview process and see what it's really like. So, but the bottom line I want you all to remember, it's tax revenue that drives this city. That's the bottom line.
Councilmember Drawson?
I'm going to take a shot in the dark here. I want to pass resolution number 2018-071 with the exception of not hiring a recreation manager at this time. You got to do, I think, individually.
Can I ask for clarification by you saying not hiring or to freeze the position?
Not to freeze the position, but I know that Councilwoman Rhino had asked in regards to what we might be able to do differently here with the parks and rec.
Well, no, what I wanted to do was a continuing resolution, not resolution 2018-071 adopting the budget. I wanted to do a totally different resolution.
And so why are we going to continue it? Just continue the resolution. I'm just asking.
Well, because I don't want to approve it, adding all of those positions when we don't even know that we are able to give those employees pay raises, and yet we're going to approve a budget that hires or allocates new positions.
I think through the negotiations that we're still going to be able to do something like that, possibly.
Really? So you're going to hire all of those positions, and you're guaranteed that after they're hired, something doesn't change, and then you're going to be faced with negotiations and say, oh, you know what, after all, we don't really have the money. That's my concern. I don't see why, other than those public safety positions we talked about, why we need to adopt the budget, approving those other positions until negotiations are through. That's my concern.
So just to clarify a few things, so the budget's obviously a very large document, hundreds of pages, and what I've heard this evening is you're comfortable with, you know, there really hasn't been any questions or concerns with the lion's share of the budget, right? This is what we operate on a day-to-day basis so we can pay our bills and keep the lights on and do all those things. This budget is based on fiscal year 18-19 of all those things. What we're discussing really are just those few positions, which from the grand scheme of things are, you know, individual decisions that really are less than a page of several hundred pages of a document. And I would suggest that there's other conditions that you can place or direct staff to provide the security that you're looking for and still approve the budget as directed. I put a few things there in red just to push a few decisions out that, again, would be still consistent with the budget, but would provide even a little more cushion to the concern that Councilman Rhino is indicating. If we were to just put a few dates in there of when the target hiring date would be, kind of starting at the bottom. Fire chief, you've indicated July 1st, start that process immediately. The fire staffing, start that process immediately. The two police positions, leave it as budgeted, or we could move that up if you'd like. I think likely hiring those is going to be difficult anyways. If we found the sixth position, we're coming to council to say, hey, we found the sixth person, let us bring them on in November versus January. And that's a no-brainer in the grand scheme of things. The two parks maintenance workers, I would suggest just moving that from a July and to both of those, hiring in January, still allowing us to do the temp staffing, as I mentioned, so we can get the immediate need for this fiscal year. Again, a budget savings, not a budget cost. Hold off on the code enforcement officer till January 1st. Again, a strong advocate for both the recreation positions is being able to continue the programming that we have here currently. But that would be the staff recommendations. Just push those dates out a little bit, and you can include that in your resolution, and we can control that internally, both on the recruitment side, to ensure that those those issues are not addressed until the council has approved all those resolutions.
And if negotiations are over in a month or so, then we've approved a budget that says we're not going to hire our code enforcement officer to January 1, our parks maintenance workers to January 1. So, but yet we're going to turn around and right away hire a recreation manager.
It's a current vacant position. That would be my recommendation.
Okay. All right. Well, then again,
but again,
I don't want to do that. I still would go with a continuing resolution.
Let's go January 1.
It's your motion, so you define how you want it, so.
I like that right there, with the exception of the recreation manager.
So, to clarify, the rec coordinator?
We can keep the rec coordinator, that's $57,000, but the recreation manager, I would probably say at this time, no. And that's something that we could always come back to. I mean, when she brought this up, Councilwoman Rhino brought it up earlier today, and again, I remember as a little kid, again, back in the 70s, I think that was basically how some of the business was done. But, this whole thing, as I stated earlier in the presentation, needs to be looked at a little bit differently because it's costing us a lot of money. And I understand you said that we're going to be out of the red of this building as a couple goes. The other aspect, the sidebar, was we had talked about that I still sit there and I see the two ladies that were in here, and we lost Tracy, and she was great, and obviously Kimberly is still here. But that's a lot of money. That's $130,000 something, give or take, for a recreation manager?
I believe that's correct, fully burdened.
Yeah,
But again, if we don't have that position, we're going to have to reduce programming. We cannot.
That's what you say, and I'm not disagreeing with it because I'm not a rec manager, but you're not either. So, and again, I don't mean to be rude about it, but I'm just saying that,
I'm just saying, we for years, this organization, when we laid off 22 employees in this organization back in 2007 and 8, we did more with less. We can't do any more. We have to do less. So I'm just trying to be honest. We can't provide the same level of programming with less people. It's just that simple.
But if you're taking the recreation coordinator from part-time to full-time, couldn't they fill in some of the programs?
It's 20 hours.
But like I said, couldn't they just fill in some?
The 40-hour position that had 15 years of experience was obviously more efficient and put in more than 40 hours. There's a deficit in hours.
So you want to restate your motion?
Yeah, I'm going to have the same motion that I had, and I see this in regards to, and again, I'm going to throw it out there, the code enforcement officer. I think we need one now. I don't think we wait till January 1st. I mean, I see that you put that on there. I'm just looking outside the box. I'm thinking.
I was trying to give some cushion to.
Absolutely. But so my resolution to pass number 2018-071 is not hiring a rec manager at this present time, not to say that we won't, and that everything else flies.
As shown here.
As shown there.
You don't want the code enforcement date changed?
Yes, I asked to change it.
Yeah. July 1st,
to July 1.
Got it.
Second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember DeRosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lane?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein?
No.
Councilmember Rhino?
No.
And Mayor Vieira.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2.
And let me explain, the only reason I voted no was because additional code enforcement officer, I do like it January 1, because we will be going through our codes and ordinances, and when we give them complete direction, then we can bring them on board. That's the reason I voted no.
And I voted no because I want to be sure that those employees get their pay raises, and I know what this said about January, but I just feel more comfortable if we had done a continuing resolution.
I have a question though, Toby. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Linda. If for some reason, the negotiations and we're going to give some more money and it's going to take our reserves down to like 16%, 17%, we can still choose not to hire for those other positions.
Of course, of course.
So then,
Yeah, if the conditions change, we're coming back with the budget amendment if, anything.
all right. I'd like to also pass resolution number 2018-072.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember DeRosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Lane?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Klein?
Stumped.
Yes.
Councilmember Rhino?
No.
And Mayor Vieira.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Okay, we have no discussion items this evening. Councilmember referrals, is there anyone on the council that would like to have an item placed on a future agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to reports. Councilmember Rhino?
I have an update on the landscaping at the post office, or the lack of landscaping. At the Memorial Day observation at the cemetery, Congressman Denham was there, and so I approached him and asked him, I've told him I've worked with his staff and that nothing was being done. When I got back from, and I said I wanted to know what was going on. So about a week ago, I heard back from one of his staff personnel that they actually had cleaned up, they had hired someone to clean up the weeds and things, and now they were going to have someone on staff that would be taking care of it. But when I drove by there, all the weeds are gone, which is an improvement, but the lawn is dead. And I thought, well, before I get excited about that, we probably need to start watering our own, so I won't get excited about their dead lawn. That's my only comment.
Okay, Vice Mayor Klein?
Yes, I'm on the STANCOG board and also an alternate member for ACE Train, but yet the San Joaquin Morning Express service to Sacramento, which is part of Amtrak, they've asked me to say something that, they've started a Saturday service going to Sacramento, and they're offering a first rider free program. So if you've never tried Amtrak to go to Sacramento or anything, what they're doing is they're encouraging you to ride it. You can sign up, and your first ride Amtrak to Sacramento is free of charge. It's a program to try to increase ridership and to bring people aware of it. So if you have the opportunity and you want to spend the day just to try the Amtrak, I just want you to be aware of they do have that program. So, with train ridership, they're trying to increase and encourage it. So, and with ACE Train coming this way, it would be a nice little venture, even though I know they're a little bit separate, but to get to be a little bit of knowledge on it.
Councilmember Lane?
First of all, I'd like to thank staff for the hard work they did. Suzanne, thank you for the budget and the hard work I know you put into it. And Toby, thank you. I know it's always difficult, and maybe this year was a little more fun. You had a little money to work with, but let's hope we keep it going that way. Again, great job, staff, and hopefully things will calm down here in the city a little bit, and we can move forward and get through negotiations. So with that said, have a good evening.
Councilmember DeRosa?
No, just state the same thing Councilmember Lane said.
All right, yeah, I too want to echo the comments. thank you for putting together a detailed budget. It's always a give and take and never very easy. But I want to thank you for all the hard work that you did. So with that, Ms. Dean, any comments that you had?
I just wanted to thank my two accountants. They really went above and beyond their job descriptions to make this happen, and only 2 minor errors that didn't change the overall budget. I'm very proud of them.
Thank you. Legal counsel, anything this evening?
Nothing for me, thank you, though.
Okay. Mr. Wells?
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to echo the comments about the outstanding work the Finance Department continues to do, from audits to putting the budget together, and really all of the staff. You know, we've been through 4 very, very difficult years where we were managing budgets that were really unrealistic in the grand scheme of things, and we're in this position today through all of the reflective staffs doing their jobs of managing budgets. And I want to thank all the staff, and especially the Finance Department. Suzanne and her team did an outstanding job, so very proud of them. Very proud to get a budget approved, and look forward to, as Mr. Brandt indicated, having some resources to work to improve the culture and move our organization forward. We've been in a tough spot for a number of years, and the employees are looking for, you know, this place to be a better place to work, and that's something that we as a management team are trying to do. But when there are no resources and limited folks to do that, it's very difficult. So we look forward to the day changing, and that the sunshine shining for a change. So we're definitely looking forward to that.
Mr. Westbrook?
Concerts in the park tomorrow night, 6:30. Paddock Castillo Davis will be singing songs from the 60s.
Maybe Councilmember Klein will be there. Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This Wednesday, we'll be having our final walkthrough on the playground portion of Neal Park, and that will be opening this week. About 2 weeks after that, we'll be opening the dog park as well.
Great. Mr. Smith?
We are going to be doing what we can about the 4th of July fireworks. Zero tolerance. We will come up with a plan and hopefully get to work with fire department as well.
Thank you. Yeah, my neighbor decided to have the small mini display, and beside myself and 2 other neighbors who had stuff falling in their backyard, these things were going up a couple 100 feet in the air, and obviously not your safe and sane model. So I appreciate you doing that, because there seems to be no regard for, you know, catching people's houses on fire or anything. So just make sure you guys stay safe out there. So, thanks. Mr. Collins, anything?
Nothing, Mayor.
Okay. Bettina? Jeremy? Rich?
Thank you. Just real quick about the fireworks. I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that as in years past, we've had huge difficulties with our enforcement side of the illegal fireworks with regard to not having people around to handle that kind of enforcement. The fire investigation unit with the DA's office that does a lot of fire investigations is not going to have the staff on duty this year to be able to do some of that enforcement. So with the limitations that fire and police are going to have, being completely stripped thin on that night because of just the sheer amount of calls, there are going to be a lot of unanswered calls for illegal fireworks. We've had a lot of problems in the past when the fire services tried to enforce illegal fireworks, and because we're not equipped and trained to handle that person that's, you know, involved in criminal activity, we tend to take a more reserved approach to it and deal with the emergencies afterwards. So we don't have vests, we don't have handcuffs, we don't have the ability to enter and exit crime scenes very quickly in big fire trucks. So fires are going to happen, and we're going to do the best we can to respond, you know, with the resources that we have available. And then just make mention, Councilmember Klein, I know you said we don't get shot at, but a lot of the firefighters are in mourning right now across the nation with the passing of Captain David Rosa from the Long Beach Fire Department, who was ambushed by someone with issues. That's all I'm going to say about that. But he was shot. He was drawn into the scene of an incident and murdered. So our thoughts and prayers are going out to the family of the Rosas and the Long Beach Fire Department. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move to closed session where we have, I don't know if we'll address the conference with labor negotiator. We had done that previously, and also the public employee performance evaluation for the city attorney and city manager. And I don't believe we'll have anything to report out after that. So from that, we will adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be July 9th. So, thank you.